You're listening to Human Factors Tech, the show that dives beneath the surface of enterprise transformation. Hosted by Jared Degnan, each episode explores the hidden drivers behind real change, not just the how, but the why. Because in the world of big systems and bigger stakes, it's not just about the tech, it's about the people who make it work. This is Human Factors Tech.
Welcome back to Human Factors Tech. I'm Jared Degnan. This is the podcast where we talk about everything technology and the human factors that go into it. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in again. It's been a little bit of a couple of months. The first couple of months of 2026, I don't know about you guys, but for me, have been absolutely crazy. Been doing a lot of traveling, not only to some of my core clients, but also to far-flung places like Alaska to do some incredible work with some great folks, and just been incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to go and visit and to really explore some very interesting human problems, particularly in the energy and utility spaces, which hopefully I'll be able to talk more about later on. But I want to talk today about this so-called SaaSpocalypse. And if you're not familiar, SaaSpocalypse has been a pretty big topic of conversation in the business community, if only because people are talking about how AI is going to replace all software as a service. And it's had a pretty significant impact on the overall stock market, particularly the finances of some of these large SaaS companies like Salesforce, et cetera, with the theory being that AI is going to replace the vast majority of these integrator services. So instead of having something like a payment service, there's going to be an AI that will essentially take the place of, let's just say, an API and do all these transactions for you. And we can see a lot of this coming to life already with things like Claude Cowork and some of these AI personal assistants. And I thought it was really interesting because I've seen this even in some of my own work, where there is an interesting conundrum that I've had for years with regards to journey mapping software. So for any of you who've ever used, Figma or Miro or like Uexpressia, for instance, these are really great, very high quality SaaS tools that focus on journey mapping. So journey mapping is that typical process where you have the different stage gates and you look at people, process, technology, or you look at, you look at thinking, feeling, doing, for instance. And what's interesting about my own journey with some of these SaaS products is that because I work not only in human factors, but I also work in the business side of things, I tend to think that a lot of my use cases for journey maps are tending more towards the business impact more than anything else. And, these typical pieces of journey mapping software are fantastic in their own right. They do amazing things, particularly when they connect to personas, particularly when they connect to different platform activities, whether that be, different channels like web, mobile, SMS, et cetera, or even kind of like being able to put in your own different platforms. However, the problem that I've always had with some of these journey mapping SaaS softwares is that they haven't been really customizable. I'm, for instance, really obsessed with ROI, and I really wanted to create something where I could articulate the impact of human behavior on financial prospects for a company. So, for instance, if something's going wrong from a human factor standpoint, a lot of the executives that I talk to want to know, okay, that's great, but what does it mean to buy a business? It sounds great, it sounds soft and stuff, sounds fluffy, and it's great for customer experience. But I can't just go to my board with customer experience. I have to go to my board with how is this going to either make me money or how is it going to save me money? So being able to visualize that on a journey map is really, really important to me. And none of these tools could really do it for me. So I did what most type A strategists who have experienced a little bit of vibe coding training. I did what most of us have done, and I have gone in and I've actually tried to create my own app. And I've done it pretty successfully. In fact, I've created kind of a journey mapping application that does exactly what I want it to do and outputs it in a way that shows me the data in exactly the way I want to do it. And I've actually tested this app with several of my clients, and it has given me an advantage over some of the SaaS platforms, which begs the question, will I need these SaaS platforms like Uexpressio or Figma or Miro or anything that I use journey mapping software for? Will I need those in the future? And I think this is a question that a lot of executives are asking themselves right now, particularly if you're in the SaaS market. Is my business going to continue to serve the markets that I need it to serve, or is it going to be replaced by AI? And the answer, I think, is, as always, very complicated. And it's not just a single answer. And I think that a lot of people are going to try to replace a lot of their existing software as a service applications, whether that be Salesforce, OneTrust, any of these major platforms. I think they're going to try, because with vibe coding and AI the way it is, it's made it so easy. If you have an image in your head of what you want the experience to be from an app standpoint, it's actually not that hard to create that experience on a vibe coding platform like Lovable. Now, just because we can doesn't necessarily mean that we should. In fact, as I start to share this app with some of my coworkers, and we're using it for maybe one client in particular, and we're using it for a very specific use case. As we continue to scale and expand the use of this app, the problem starts to arise that this is a really good idea. It's a great idea. If a practitioner with a very specific use case is able to build a better mousetrap, then why not do it? The answer is, of course, in the details. It's about security. It's about scalability. It's about all of the nuances of cloud computing that platforms like Salesforce and, anything that's built on the cloud, they spend years working on their resiliency. They spend years on their scalability. And even if we do have great platforms like Lovable that mirror that experience and have these fallbacks, you're still going to hit a wall where the work that you do is not going to be as good as the work that an expert will do. And I think this is across the spectrum for all AI. The fact of the matter is that you can have a AI researcher do the work for you. You can do it. You can do it faster. You can do it cheaper, and you can do it more effectively. The question is it going to be that much more accurate, or will there be a gap between what you ultimately need, the high quality research, and what you can do on AI? And a really interesting allegory of this is when I was first starting out right after grad school, I started to work for a company that did a lot of social media research. And this company was kind of coming out just around the time that like NetBase was getting hot. And NetBase is this LLM based application that scans social media feeds and then applies sentiment analysis to it and then derives meaning from it. And there were a bunch of us who had been exposed to some of these more automated platforms. And this was AI before like AI was really hot. And we kept on saying, why can't we just use these tools? I mean, getting an enterprise license wasn't that expensive. And ultimately, our clients were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not, up to $1 million for us to have these teams that went out and like manually counted some of these sentiment um, ratings on like forums and Twitter and all these other fun things. But the answer was that, as much as we could have a tool do it for us, the quality level, the accuracy just never came close to what the human sentiment did. Now, again, with the advent of AI, the advent of LLMs and machine learning, we are starting to approach a zenith. We're starting to approach a plateau where the distance between human accuracy and machine accuracy is actually the gap is closing. And as long as you know how to write effective prompts and you know the pros, cons, strengths, and weaknesses of a particular AI platform, you're not going to be that far off. And I have found that, in particular, when you're talking about research, AI can be a huge, huge benefit for you. Now, back to the subject of SaaS platforms. With giving you the example of this journey mapping tool that I've been developing, it's a cool platform. It's a cool tool, and it certainly does what I need it to do. And I have been using this particular app not just to map the journey, but to map the journey against the business experience. And I've been doing so in a way that I use it with live audiences. And I can tell you that there's been no platform that I have seen that's off the shelf that does this. But again, the devil's in the details. When you start to scale this thing, I know that I'm going to have a conversation with some of my cloud developers. I'm going to have some conversation with some of my UX and UI colleagues. And there's going to be a discussion about how we scale this, because just because I can do something a certain way does not mean that it's going to be bulletproof for the masses. And maybe that's the point. Maybe what we're looking at is not necessarily just, a single app. Maybe we're talking about app instances where you take an app off the shelf and you are able to customize it. And instead of having that problem with tech debt where you have a whole bunch of instances of a single app that's out there, and then you have to deal with support and whether or not you can support something, maybe this is one of those things where you're using microservices, you're using APIs, you're using microcodes in order to truly enable an experience that works for your own business. Now, the question is whether or not that's going to work in the long term, particularly when you have different platforms that do different things. And again, I'll go back to the security thing. That tends to be the red herring for any of these. As much as I'm able to code this platform, I'm having to use it in a very specific sandbox because I don't want client data to be exposed. But if I want this thing to grow further, it's going to have to be in a much more enterprise level platform if I want it to be multi-tenant. So, I think that there is something to the SaaSpocalypse. I do think there is going to be something to this idea of AI and vibe coded applications replacing your run of the mill SaaS applications. But I will put this one caveat into place. Just like anything else AI, I don't think it's going to be a full replacement. I think that what it's going to do is eliminate the need for the less than applications. And I'm going to choose my words very carefully here. I think there are applications that are out there that have been developed with good intent, but don't quite reach the level of killer app status, usability, for instance. And I think that that's really going to be the bar, because whereas it's very easy to create an app these days. And the problem with that being that just because you can does not necessarily mean that you should. And I think that bar is going to get higher and higher and higher, to the point that I truly believe that it's going to create a whole new set of super apps. And I think those super apps are going to be what that SaaS application is all about. So with that, the dog is barking. And so that probably means that I've gone on for a little bit too long, but I do want to take that as a grain of salt with all of the noise and the stuff out there about, SaaS applications. So with that, I want to remind everybody to stay human. Please share this set of insights with people, argue with me, tell me that you think I'm wrong, tell me why you think I'm wrong. This is a discussion, and I think the way that we all get better is by discussing these things out in the open and challenging each other. So with that, I hope you guys are having a great week, and I look forward to catching you next time on the next Human Factors Tech.
Thanks for listening to Human Factors Tech. If this conversation resonated with you, please follow, share, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And for more stories on the people powering enterprise transformation, visit humanfactorstech.com.